Super tactical today. But we talked about our core main values and principles are three main things. What are they? Personal responsibility, right? Radical personal responsibility. Number two, what? Personal development. Three, contribution, right? Number two, we'll talk about today, personal development. Why is that so important? Deeper than that. What do you think determines the number of sales you have? Well, it's the single most important thing that determines how many sales you have this year. Skill set. What else? What is it? Sales IQ. What else? Self-accountability. Keep going. Something above all that. So we talk about sales IQ. It's a great one. What was the other one you guys said? What else? Objection. And everyone knows that, right? Then why don't they do it? What else? Why? It's a great excuse, right? And it's possible. I'll break it down for you guys. It's important, a big takeaway for me. Time, what else? What else? If I notice you have the board, you used to track the board. Everybody had everybody's name and numbers. And every single month, month after month after month, the same people at the top. Why is that?
They're not comfortable living at the bottom. At bottom.
Yeah.
So bad that they'll do anything to be at the top.
Yes. Like what?
Like stay late.
Practice your sales IQ. Practice your skill set, right? Practice objection handling, right? Do whatever it needs to do. And so what's the difference there? This is a big aha for me and for you guys. I've known it for years. My number one thing at running a team in a company for, I don't even know, since 2008, whatever that is, a long time, almost 20 years now. I've noticed the only thing that separates people from the bottom to top comes to one thing. What is it?
Practicing.
Nope, above that.
Personal responsibility.
Identity. What does that mean, you think? The person at the bottom will never allow themselves to be at the bottom. Why? Because that's not who they are. Right? If I'm in any organization, you put me up anywhere in the country, I'm not going to be at the bottom. Why? I will go crazy, and I'll stay up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week until I do what? Learn the skill set to figure out however I'm going to be the dude. And I did the same thing in timeshare. I started selling timeshare at 18 years old. Instead of sitting in the trailer, guess what I did? I wasn't good. Guess what I did? I identified the three top selling dudes, two guys and one girl, and guess what I did? Every break I sat right behind their table and just did what? Listen to them. I even bought a tape recorder, and guess what I did? Recorded it, and then guess what I did? Over and over and over and over and over and over and over. All I did was copy what they did. And guess what happened? Started selling. I was like, holy cow, I was the youngest kid to ever sell that many, right? One of the highest VPGs in history of that resort. I was in college, and they would come back on the weekends, and they let me go out first because I have VPG. Not because I'm anything special. Guess what I did? Did the word copy whoever's doing whatever work. I took a little piece of what they did, a little piece of what they did. All of a sudden, added my presentation, figured out objection handling, read a bunch of books. All of a sudden, able to do it. Why? Because I had this identity, and thankfully, I'm very lucky. I've been trying to break this down lately, read a bunch of books. Like, this one's really good about talent stuff. And where does this come from? And as I'm raising children, I'm trying to think about the same thing, all right? How do I help fix this for people? Where do you think it comes from?
Childhood.
Childhood, where? Parents and experiences, right? So for me, I look back, what was the most important thing for me? I played soccer when I was 2 years old. 2.5, 3 years old. Guess what happened? I ended up being very good for some reason, right? When my dad worked me before, I don't know. I just remember scoring a lot of goals. And that gave me what? Confidence. All of a sudden that confidence built. Mom told me I could do anything I want, be anything I want, right? And so I started winning more. And then all of a sudden, a couple of times I lost. I remember one time I blew a penalty kick, right? At this huge tournament in Charleston for Thanksgiving. Lost it for the whole team. Guess what happened? Devastated me, right? But it made me come back better because guess what? Hated losing more than anything in the world. But I look back, it built this identity. And so what goes back to, okay, let's say I wasn't lucky enough to have this situation or have some bad happen or whatever it was, to this, what do I got to do? I got to fix this. And so the number one thing that separates person at the top, number one, and let's say number 10 is identity. Make sense? And so what people do, and let's say I've been number one, but I'm not feeling number one lately. Guess what I got to do? Go back and build it. If I go back to what we talked about 2 weeks ago, anybody's been stuck. I got on somebody in the office last week in a one-on-one about this, right? Because what do top producers do? They get stuck in business. Anybody's burned out that gets uncomfortable that starts hating their work, guess what they stop doing? Personal development. If I'm burned out, I'm stuck, I had a ceiling, personal development. I can guarantee I listened to you and follow you the last 7 days, you haven't done any personal development. That's how I know, because I can read the energy. It's just how humans are. Makes sense? If I'm stuck and not converting listings, stuck and not converting price reductions, personal development. I guarantee you, I can track in the last 7 days. Same thing on the buy side. If you're not getting phone calls, booked appointments, personal development, right? So that's the key part. Now, why am I sharing this? Because there's 3 main numbers. I'll go back and just talk about this. This from the book is important. I want you guys to write this down. I am versus I want. What's the difference in those two, you think? The only difference between aspiration and identity is the verb. The only difference between aspiration and identity is the verb. What does that mean, you think? Use to what? Right? I describe an action what it is. And so that's key part. So what's the difference? Aspirational language, give you an example. I want to be a top producer. What's the identity? I am the top producer. See the difference here? I want to be a top producer, I am a top producer, which is important, right? I'm trying to hit my sales goals. I am someone who always hits my sales goals. You guys with me on this? I hope to close more deals. I am a closer. Right? We did this before. I'm a closer, right? I'm a marketer, I'm a leader, I'm a closer. Over and over and over. So, if I'm someone who's getting my right now, what do I do? Should my identity basically choose to change my identity? We have to adapt to what's happened in the marketplace. I've gone back the last 12 months, double, quadruple down, spent more money than I ever have in personal development, double more time in it because I have to do what? Grow the identity in terms of who, even physically changing, losing 30 pounds, because I'm shifting who I am and what I do to adjust to the marketplace. Does that make sense? We have to make sure we're all doing that. And so here's the key part of what that is, right? That's the main difference. I'll go back to some technical parts of it. And so that's the key part. It says when identity changes, outcomes and processes change automatically. And so I'll give you guys an example of what this is. There's 3 levels of this. Number 1, what they call outcomes. This is where people mostly focus on number 2. Number 1 is outcomes. I'll break it, make it make sense in a minute. So outcomes, what does that mean, you think?
End result.
That's what you achieve. Exactly. So my outcome is what I achieve. So that would be things like what? Sales numbers, right? That would be like dials, appointments, income, whatever it is. That's what I achieve is level 1 is my outcome. You guys remember on that? What most people measure, simple people, is their targets. Number 2, broken down. Number 2 level is process. What does that mean?
What it takes to get there.
Level 2 is what you do daily, right? So that would be like daily calls, role play, follow-up systems, things like that. So this would be my calls. And ultimately, this is what 95 out of 100 businesses and people focus on. So things not working in my business, right? Been in the business for a while. I'm having trouble. What do they do? Well, I'm going to look at my numbers, show up my numbers. Well, I'm not hitting my numbers. Okay, I'm going to look at my processes. I start doing more of the processes, but guess what happens in many cases? It's not working, so I start changing them up. Or I start doing the same thing over and over. It's not working. This could be for you guys on the buyer side, same thing on the listing side, same thing on the investment side. Most people focus on outcomes and processes, and the main difference here that people don't really focus on is level 3. What do you think level 3 is? Identity. And the one thing that helps shift identity right now is the breakthrough is going to come through what? Personal development. So that comes down to what? Who you believe you are. Does that make sense? And so the example of that would be like a warrior, elite performer. I'm a leader, top producer, no matter what. And so if my identity has gotten rocked lately, like mine happened in business, like dude, I've been in business for a very, very long time. Got my flipped Q4, Q1 this year. I'm like, dude, what the hell? Am I still the same guy? Right? Do I have these same skill sets? Yes, I know it. So I had to go back and do what? Invest and examine and continue to grow the identity to the next level. Right? Business has shifted how things used to be. And so it's important, right? You've gone through that last 6 to 8, 9 months. Have you noticed that? Yeah. What have you noticed? And you kind of started things to drift a little bit. Went back and said, hey, what I tell you to do? Put on yourself, and particularly what?
Personal development.
Why?
Because there's going to be a lot of negative stuff that's going to come your way.
You mentioned last week, as you start going through the personal development and you start making the investment, right? You start getting up earlier, making sure you're at the gym on time, right? Certain days, whatever it is, and all of a sudden, I'm listening to podcasts, come in, and you do that week after week, what happens? What? You feel like it's earned, which does what? Confidence. People don't work with you necessarily because of what you say. They don't work with you on the phones, I mean. All these high-end clients, middle clients, what are they judging you on? Your confidence. If you come in or super unconfident in how you show up and how you work or how you talk to them on the listing side or the buyer side, what do? They shut you down, go, you go somewhere else. They don't tell you. They just go, they're scoring everything you say, not with your words, but your confidence. So that has to be earned through what? Practice, which is personal development, which are things like, guess what? Listening stuff. Ed Milet talked about it today. Chris, you remember in the video? Ed Milet talked about it. And Eric Thomas talked about it. Remember what it was? Ryan kind of mentioned earlier. When do you say champions are made? Champions are made in the dark. What does that mean? Champions are made in the dark when no one's watching. What that means is the ones that are practicing, the ones that do extra reps. He talks about, hey, the ones that win big in college football, professional athletes, they're the ones that win not in the coach's time, in their own time. When they're practicing reps and doing film and watching things in the gym, extra and above what it was, right? You guys heard the stories about Kobe Bryant. What were the stories about Kobe Bryant? Anybody remember? There's multiple players who said they would go train, and what will they find? Not only was he already there, he what? He already worked out, finished, and was done finishing by the time the dude who was early got there to start working out. Why? Because he was a champion, and he knows it was earned in the dark. Does it make sense? So if I'm struggling right now in business, no matter how long you've been here, 5, 10 years, right, 12 years, or even 1 year, what do you got to do? Your identity has to match the level of market that we're in right now. And that would be things like you guys mentioned, sales IQ, skill set, right, and objection handling. And if there's more resistance in the marketplace in terms of pricing, seller resistance, buyer resistance, what do I got to do? Be that much better in how I show up. And I can measure that based on how many hours you put in the last 7 days in personal development. Well, what will those things look like? Well, those are going to be things like, number one, I'd say listen to podcasts. Again, listen to podcasts is passive. That's not an excuse in my book. Are there any things like books? Like as Tim, as you go through and read the book with Ryan Serhant, right? What does it make you feel? Oh, I can use that. Oh, damn, I'm not doing this. Oh, man, I can do this, right? Wearing a suit jacket today. Not a coincidence. Maybe you read the one thing yesterday about how you show up, right? It changes literally physical identity from day to day based on what? Personal development, right? It makes a massive difference. You feel better wearing that today? See what I'm saying? So it makes a big difference in that. That is a perfect example of that, right? And so that's going to be listening, watching. Right now we have this amazing tube called what? YouTube. Anything you want to figure out. How do I get a seller to reduce reductions? YouTube. How to get a buyer to make better offers? YouTube, right? There's anything you want. Obviously, make sure it's a good person you're watching there. So I'm going to go through the thing. It's one thing. Here's the breakthrough. It says, the breakthrough moment, they stop saying, I've never been a top performer and start saying, I am a top performer. Research shows that when identity shifts, behavior becomes automatic. Super important, right? And it says, ideally, James Clear has a book, Atomic Habits. I read that a few times. He popularized a concept backed by decades of psychological research. True behavior change is identity change. I'll say it again. True behavior change is identity change. The word identity comes from Latin, means being repeatedly. Your identity is literally your repeated beingness. You become what you repeatedly do. Research on identity-based habits show stunning difference in adherence rates. So the difference is a simple way, right? Most people say what? I want to lose 20 pounds. What happens then? They lose maybe 3 or 4 pounds and nothing else. Or, let's say best case scenario, what happens? 20 pounds in what? They gain it right back, in some cases more. Why? The identity hasn't changed. And so the difference in that process is I'm a healthy person who takes care of my body who's X weight. Makes sense? Because this is the I want versus I am. You guys with me on this? Super important. So it talks about success studies show that framing habits in terms of identity, I'm a person who exercises daily, rather than outcomes, I want to lose weight, increases adherence by 32%. Why? Because identity answers the question, who am I? And once you answer that question, your behavior automatically aligns. And so you want to get to this place of right now, if I'm struggling, who am I? Right? Because the guy or the girl who had it 2 or 3 years ago is not the same one that's going to win in today's market. That's why you see a bunch of young people coming in kicking it. They don't know what the market is difficult. They weren't here in 2021. Shit was easy. They just show up and start doing the work. And guess what? They adjust their identity to where it needs to have to make money. The hardest thing you can do is be someone who had it when it was easy. All of a sudden, you're not making an adjustment to make sure you can execute when it's hard. Does that make sense? Super important piece there. So 3 levels of change, talked to you about that, right? That's the key part here with it, and just talks about the shift is I am in present tense. It's definitive. It's not negotiable. Research by Peter Burke says identity control theory shows that people are Intrinsically motivated to maintain consistency between their identity and their behavior. When there's a mismatch, they experience psychological discomfort and automatically adjust their behavior to realign with their identity. So if you guys have a sales chart, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, what do most people do? What do? They settle in where their identity is. I'm a number 4 person. Anytime they get below number 4, what do?
Work a little bit.
They get super uncomfortable. I got to do what I am, right? Or if they're in the bottom thirds, typically they're okay being that, because how do we know that? Their identities allow them to do that. Makes sense? And so all you are in your location of the sales chart, in terms of what you are, and let's say I'm number 1, number 2, but I'm falling back from where I was historically, guess what? You have to be able to get back and get this identity shift back up. Hey, no matter what, I'm a 100 deal a year producer, no matter what. Make sense? And so what happens is most people have a ceiling and they have a floor. Anytime they hit their floor where they're at, they start doing to be different to make sure they can control and stay in alignment with their identity. What's the secret? Scott, what do you think the secret is? I got to increase my identity and who I am. Ed Milet calls it this thing called thermostat, right? If someone typically operates at 70 degrees, right? And things start cooling off, all of a sudden you have a bad month, they're at 60 degrees. What do? Just enough work to get back to degrees, and then they take some time off. Because that's where their thermostat is as an identity in terms of who they are. And so what my goal needs to be is what? I got to increase my thermostat to where my level needs to be. And so what's the first step of doing this to make it work? Belief. What comes before belief, you think? I like this. Belief. What comes before that? I got to figure out who that person is. Who do I need to be and where do I want to be in terms of identity? It doesn't need to be number 1, number 2. It needs to be what? Minimum standard. I'm a buyer's agent or a general brokerage agent. I do 40 deals a year, no matter what. Okay, well, 40 years a year, what does that person do? I guarantee one thing they're going to do is what? Booking appointments. Book appointments, right? If you notice, Baron's not here, but he has some stuff with his dad. But Baron's typically number what on the call log? By like, is he number 1 like every week? Like by a little bit, a lot in most cases. A lot, right? $1,200, $1,300 a week every single week for like, I don't know, 50 weeks in a row, right? With all kinds of going on. Dad's got a sickness, all kinds of to take care of him and the grandma, a bunch of other stuff, right? Dog dying, guess what still does? Gets $1,000. And why? Identity, right? Making sure having that pressure where it is. Now, that's important for you guys. Number 1, I got to figure out who it is. What's that look like? So what does that mean? Well, what does that person do? What are their actions? What are their non-negotiables? Right? Whatever it is. And that comes back to identity we created with you guys before. 100K Chris or whatever it is, right? I had 1K Blake, whatever it is that I'm constantly refining, going back to. But I want you guys to go back and whatever's costing, you got to figure it out here. What's the way to do it? Is you got to put some work in. Work in what? Not in the business. You got to work on what? You. Specifically who you are. What do I got to do? I'm going to borrow that from somebody else. Listening side. Hey, I'm a guy who converts at 70% no matter what, 75% no matter what. And guess what? 70% of my listings sell no matter what. Okay, well, what does that guy do that I'm not doing? And then that's where you work from there. But that's got to all of a sudden move up to my new floor, right? My new minimum standard, no matter what, I don't go below that. And if I do go below that, guess what I got to do? Figure out what somebody else is doing, because there is somebody else who's converting at 80%, guaranteed. They have a skill set they haven't figured out yet, and or a process that's allowing them to get what they want. Make sense? So that's a key point for next level in what that is. And a great example of this is kind of a big aha too. What's the best example of changing somebody's identity? Anybody know? Like in the history of like anything, what's the number 1 thing that changed people's identity? The military. So what's the military boot camp do? This is a great example. So the military doesn't motivate recruits. They engineer and transform identity. What do they do when you go to boot camp? Anybody been to boot camp? They break you down. So what are they breaking you down? Here's a good aha. That's why they don't break you down. This is important. What do? They break down your civilian identity. It's systematically dismantled from haircuts to uniforms to loss of your personal items. And then they build a group identity, is immediately installed, and now you're a Marine. It's crazy how it works. You talk to somebody who's in the Marines 20 years later. Ask them who they are. What do they talk about? They're still a Marine. Why? Because that identity, right, has been inserted in them in the most powerful way. And obviously they earn that, right? Same thing with Navy SEAL, same thing with Special Forces, whatever it is. It's a big deal, right? And so the individual identity is built within the group context, and that's exactly what they do. But they help them shift that. Now, obviously, I'm not trying to do that, but I'm trying to help you guys build what? A more identity. So what do I got to do? Number one, I must dismantle the old identity. What does that start with? Hey, understand, so hey, I have my current identity in most cases from my childhood. From the way things are, from the things were. Most of us don't necessarily want to be like our parents, right? Some people are blessed to have people who want to be like them or more. But most of us want to say, okay, well, I got some of this identity from them. How can I use the good, right? Dismantle some of that because some of that's limiting beliefs. How do I know that? How you show up here in the rankings, right? And what you do. Number two with that, I want to install my new identity, which is what? The who I got to become. This is where people drop off. You must reinforce it through rituals and language. I'll say it again. Rituals and language. How does that apply to what we do? Rituals and language. Yep, number one would be, and so obviously I helped you guys out before. We can do that again if you guys want. Kind of do an updated version for like you build your identity. You guys have seen my 1K Blake, have audio listen to morning. I start knocking them down one by one, right? That comes through what? Rewiring my subconscious through repetition. But for you guys, let's just get clear and say, hey, look, what does that person do? And so let me help you out with this. The rituals would be things like what? Personal development, role play. While I'm forcing what? So, perfect example. I missed a penalty kick. One of the worst times of my life. Guess what I did after that? Huh? I shot 4,000 penalty kicks in the next 12 months. Now, guess who was the most lethal penalty kick dude ever the next year? Me. I was the one that wanted to go first every single time. It didn't matter what foot it was, which way I would drill every single time. Why? I went through the ritual of having this. And so I went from being the dude that missed penalty kick that cost my entire team the tournament to the dude that's the most lethal badass dude. They say, I want Blake to take a penalty kick. And they all came through what? Just practice, dude. Not who I was, but I did the work to change my identity from the person who missed penalty kick to the person who makes it every single time. And the only thing that happens through what? Repetition. Like one repetition or no? Hours and 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 hours over and over and over and over. Okay? But that's just how committed people got to be. And so what does that come down to? Well, that would be my scripts. For most of you guys, it would be your top 5 objections. That's it. Listening style, we're losing top 5 objections over and over and over. Buyer style, losing top 5 objections. Typically on the phone, you're failing on the second or third objection. If I have those down, boom, now all of a sudden I become lethal at those penalty kicks. You're going to be able to beat that. Now your confidence goes up. What happens here? My identity shifts because now I feel more confident in what I do. But I can never become more confident unless I do what? Practice my rituals. Like Maddie said, then you have to anchor it in through obviously your language, because why is the language part important? That's your subconscious mind. So I can do the work, but if I have my self-talk is still, oh, you're the loser, miss the penalty kicks, guess what happens when I go up to the moment and I got to hit the penalty kick? The self-talk comes in, you're the loser, you missed it before. All of a sudden, I haven't rewritten over top of that memory by just having that new thing what I am. Does that make sense? And so for you guys, you got to do this. Now, here's the thing. I'm going a little deep with this, but dude, and here's the thing. This is for every level. I'm not talking just beginners. If you're here stuck and you're hitting the 30, 40 deal a year, or if I'm stuck and went from 100 to 70 or whatever it is, I got to figure out, okay, how do I shift that identity and make it here? I've done the same exact thing for business now, including physical change, right? Mental change. Everything I'm doing is different, redoing I do my entire life, including being a father with that, which is important. And the identity shift is reinforced through public declaration, repeated rituals, and community that reflects identity back to you, which is super important with that. How does that work? Rituals, rounds, morning report, right? Morning routines, which is important. Mentorship, which is accountability through a mentor or somebody who is in there with you. Hey, here's who I'm becoming. Hold me accountable. You have permission to hold me accountable to who that person is. Through me or Ryan, whatever it is. Then ultimately, the other part of that, what you have there as responsibility, right? You want to make sure you go back and follow back up on that. And so that's a key thing. But you want to have the identity of what? I'm a closer. I'm a top producer. Same thing in our warrior thing. I'll go back to this. In my warrior thing, there's a lot of guys from Salt Lake City. What do you think the identity for most of those guys are? Mormons, right? I'm a Mormon. That's all they live. Like, why? Because they've been put in this box their whole life and programmed this entire way that they're Mormons. And if you talk about their whole identity is Mormon, then what happens is a lot of them have kind of broken out and left the church, and all of a sudden they start doing what? build their own identity. And many of them have been very successful in business because they use the discipline used to that religion and what they did to be very successful. Make sense? It's a little bit hot today, a little bit high in terms of what that is, but I want you guys, no matter where you're at, you're going to have to make sure that you get the gap. And the reason I talked about this before, right? The gap here, sellers think their property's worth way more than it is. Buyers think it's way worse than it is. Most agents are here. Your identity has to shift up to make sure you can bridge the gap. You guys with me on this? What's the number way to do it? Rituals is personal development. If you're struggling and you're feeling burned out and you're feeling tired and uncertain, I can guarantee you're not doing our personal development in the last 7 days. How do I know? I shared a video with you guys and one person listened to it. Right? You just got to make sure you're doing that, going back through it.